Let me tell you a little story about backwards politics or the bizarro world, or call it what you want. President Trump froze government hiring earlier this week, and there was this campaign promise under the guise of saving money and reducing the deficit that he would indeed do this. He would freeze all new federal hiring. This is so transparently ridiculous, and I'm going to explain to you why. Sometimes people have to be hired because work needs to get done. And work is still going to need to get done by all sorts of federal agencies. If you have a federal hiring freeze, how do you get the work done? Well, there's two ways. Number one, you start paying overtime to existing employees, which is very, very expensive. Or number two, even more expensive and even more common, you start hiring contractors and consultants from outside companies to do the work who charge way more than government salaries. If I replace federal workers with contractors, I can accurately say I've reduced spending on federal wages, or at least I've not increased spending on federal wages. I might save $1 million in federal wages. But if I have to spend $1.2 million on contractors to replace the $1 million saved on federal wages, I'm increasing total spending. I'd still be sticking by my campaign promise of reducing or limiting spending on federal wages, but I'm not actually saving taxpayers' money. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And we have examples to look at. Have past federal hiring freezes been good policy? Have they been good economically or in any other ways? Shocker. No, they haven't been. Democratic President Jimmy Carter and Republican President Ronald Reagan both did similar hiring freezes. The Government Accountability Office examined them, and they determined, I know this might be shocking to some of you, that they don't work. Hiring freezes, quote, have little effect on federal employment levels. The report from the GAO added that these freezes, quote, disrupt agency operations and in some cases increase costs to the government. Also, just think about it from a completely common sense perspective. You've got employees and there's more work than they can handle. You can't hire new people because of a federal hiring freeze. So you bring in outside contractors to help with the work. Outside contractors aren't familiar with the organization and with the day-to-day processes, et cetera, and they can actually disrupt the work that is being done in a way that ends up costing even more money to get back to working order. It's all backwards, and of course, never far behind with the Trump administration, Pat, is the reality that the hiring freeze also will disproportionately affect women, minorities, and veterans since they represent a higher share of federal employees than the private sector. Save money by enacting expensive policies. What?
This is really just one of those Republican tactics that they always go back to. They pretend that they're going to either create jobs or save money, and it turns out that the bill is actually counterproductive to those goals, and really it's about just playing into corporate interests.
It's also sort of a distraction because there's not been a big increase in federal employment. I know that the right likes to think that government is completely out of control in terms of hiring and hiring. Check out this graph, which shows the federal civilian workforce as a share of total civilian non-farm workforce. It's basically been on a steady decline since it peaked shortly after at the end of World War II. This just isn't even an issue, even though Trump press secretary Sean Spicer has lied about that as well, saying there's been a, quote, dramatic expansion of the federal workforce. This is policies that do the opposite of what they're supposed to do based on lies about what the problems even are. That's kind of a slogan, I guess, for the Trump administration. Solutions that don't work to problems that don't exist. That should be a bumper sticker or something. I kind of like that.
GameFly is sort of like Netflix for video games. They have over 8,000 new and classic games for Xbox One, Xbox 360, PS4, PS3, Wii, and a bunch of other platforms. And you can play as many games as you want for one monthly fee. And if you find some games you want to keep, you can buy them for a low used price. There's never any due dates or late fees. And our audience can get a free 30-day trial at gameflyoffer.com/TDPS. The games are shipped directly to you with return envelopes included. There's no contracts, and you can rent games through the mobile app. Get the free 30-day trial for the David Pakman Show audience and support our show by going to gameflyoffer.com/TDPS.